Today we are continuing with a review of submissions. The last time I had left this particular submission. It's the directed writing task, a speech from June 2024, paper 2, variant 2. And I had left it for later, which is now is later. So let's start with this and then we can move on to the composition task. So this is about 600 words, just 5 words. In fact, no, if I go into editing and remove this bit because it's just repetition. And then Control Shift C, 539, which is still about 200 words more, 190 or 89 to be specific, right? More than what you'd want. So let's take I've read this. So let's take a look at this. There are certain parts where we can, trim it down as much as possible. And there are also certain areas where the vocabulary doesn't quite sit well. Now, one thing I noticed, right, with your choice of vocabulary is maybe, right? So I'm just guessing based on experience. Is Dua, you tell me that you thought of a word and then you looked up a synonym and then you just put that synonym into the sentence. Is that what you did? You say yes, right? And so that's not how we do it. Okay. And so I have this open from last time. And if you just take a look at, right, synonyms are always similar words. And another thing you want to see is what's the meaning, first of all, right? If that word has more than one meaning, then what meaning are you trying to use it in? So useless can be as an adjective, not fulfilling or not expected to achieve the intended purpose or desired outcome. And then you've got all these synonyms, right? Then there's another meaning, having no ability or skill. And then you've got these, right? So obviously, if you are, if you're wanting to use useless in this particular meaning, but you pick and you're not careful and you pick a synonym from over here, you write worthless or incompetent or right bum, for example. It's not the same thing because the meaning changes. So that's one thing to be careful about. The second thing to be careful about is synonyms are similar in meaning. They're not the exact same. So if you just take a look at a few of these, right? Useless, not fulfilling or not expected to achieve the intended purpose or desired outcome. Now let's take a look at futile. Okay. Let's take a look at futile. Incapable of producing any useful result, pointless. Okay. Let's take a look at hopeless. Feeling or causing despair, right? So in a certain context, and by context we mean the way that we are using the word useless, you can replace it with hopeless, but not everywhere, right? So this machine is useless, means it doesn't do its job. So even there, I won't use futile. I would use unproductive. I would use unusable, right? I would perhaps say broken, maybe, right? Futile is based on an effort that you put in. Again, right? Even if you just take a look at the meaning, it seems, oh, it's pretty much the same as useless. But then comes in the context. fine, it looks the same, but is it used in the same context? And no, futile is used in a context where effort is being put in, right? So your efforts are futile, right? A futile attempt to keep fans from mounting the stage. So effort was being put in to stop the fans from coming on stage. It was futile. So the actual meaning and the context, like I just showed you, hopeless, right? Unprofitable, right? Not beneficial or useful. Again, you would say, oh, it's not useful, which means it's useless. But it depends on the context. So look at the example they've given. There has been much unprofitable speculation. Speculation meaning guesswork, right? And so the guesswork has been fruitless, or it hasn't been of any useless. Therefore, right? So you have to keep that in mind. If you just pick a word, oh, this sounds nice, and you put it in, that's not going to work. And that is why in the mark scheme, if I just open one up, give me a sec. So English 1123, any mark scheme for paper 2, so MS 21. Let me just shift to that. All right, can you see the PDF? If you take a look at the mark scheme for both the directed writing and the composition, right? So those are general guidelines and stuff. Let's take a look at the specifics. So this is for reading, and that basically is the points that you are able to pick out and the evaluation that you do. And this is for writing. So for the highest level, and obviously, right, it becomes the writing becomes weaker as you go to lower levels. But for the highest levels, content is complex, well developed, and effective. And to have a complex, to have complex content, so you're mixing the points and you're presenting your argument and all of that. It's well organized and assimilates ideas from the text. So you're including ideas from the text. Uses a wide range of well constructed sentences accurately. Right? So that is important. It's not that you're making, oh, I'm making complex sentences. I'm using subordinating conjunctions, right? Are you doing it correctly? And they mentioned complex sentences. Precise and effective use of a wide range, right? So it needs to be precise and effective both. So you need to know which word you're using. Does it fit in this context? Is it giving the meaning I want to give? Right? If that is being achieved, very good. If not, then right, you'll move down the level, right? So over here you can see effective use of a range of vocabulary. It's not precise, it's just effective, right? Perhaps. And you go lower, and right, I mean it's not like this. Use a straightforward range of appropriate vocabulary. Now what if it's not precise and effective, right? So you will lose marks. So again, and another thing, you don't necessarily need big fancy words to make an impression. If you use standard vocabulary, but you use it precisely and effectively, right? By standard vocabulary, I mean by standards of English, right? So it doesn't need to be a fancy word, right? But if you use it properly, it's precise and effective. That is much better than taking a risk with a word that you're not quite sure of how to use, how to incorporate or integrate that into your text. Right? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing that. If you are confident, if you practice, if you're willing to learn and try, sure, go ahead. Even then, just don't make it very verbose, right? Don't make it very, heavy with with that vocabulary, that you're just like having these fat words one after the other. Because that makes it reading it a bit, you know, slow and cumbersome at times. So if you're just like throwing in a word or two here and there, that's fine. One after the other, it's making it very vocabulary rich, so to speak. No. Okay. So with that, let's go back. All right, then is the point of referring to the text. So I already mentioned that for your earlier submission, and right, we also communicated after class. So the thing is that, as I mentioned, right, what Afin did with the speech, I believe that she referred to some block, and you can do that, right? It's better not to refer to the, or in fact, instead of saying better, I'd say just don't do it. Don't refer to the given text directly. So right, don't say text A and text B, or don't say Raj and Sentina, or whatever names they provided. Right? Present it as if you have done the research, and you, like, obviously you got the information from somewhere, whether you went out to ask people, whether you did research online, whether you read an article, like somewhere, obviously, right? But that's how you're supposed to present it, that you did your homework and these are the points you have, instead of referring to, oh, this is the exam and I'm answering an exam question, and this is the text given in the exam, right, for the direct writing task, right? Okay, now let's get down to first trimming this. So what are the parts we can remove? Okay, good morning, everyone. Imagine a day on this earth without a single wild creature. This sounds pretty dominating. So here's the first one. Right? I honestly don't know what you meant over here by dominating. This sounds pretty dominating to us humans, for we consider ourselves the legal heirs of nature's provided amenities. Right? Like what do you mean by dominating? Like it makes us feel superior, like we're in a position of power over everything else. Is that what you meant? Okay. So that is what you meant. But if you take it that way, how does that link into this particular line? Imagine a day on this earth without a single wild creature. How does that put us into a position of authority? And then you go on and say, but is our sole existence enough to maintain the harmonial balance of ecology? So from this rhetorical question, it seems as if your speech is about humanity's role in terms of, the ecosystem, and then you talk about zoos. So I think in an attempt to come off as impressive, it sort of ended up being confusing, right? Because it's not sitting well together overall. So we can try and rewrite this. I'll just put a star over here for the time being. And, in fact, I'll just remove all of that. So we need to rewrite the introductory paragraph. Okay, moving on. So most of the time it is considered that zoos are the solution to animal extinction. You're starting off at that point. As the blogger has highlighted, we can remove the name for the time being. We can restructure this obviously much better, but let's just remove the name to begin with. Remove that as well and put a comma over here. Zoos are the best way to raise awareness, which eventually leads humans to avoid such activities that are harmful to animals. So that's linking in with animal extinction. Assuming that animals are going extinct because of human activity only, which seems to be the major case nowadays. But however, if we give a close look to the conditions under which animals are usually kept, these okay now right, you're not going to use a semicolon over here. Why? Because you're using an if, so that is a conditional, and that also makes it a subordinate clause. So if we give a close look to so and so and so and so, and this whole thing is a subordinate clause, right? So what you want over here is a comma, not a semicolon, right? These only intensify the threats to animal life. By these, right, you mean the zoos, right? Now it's a bit confusing over here where these are going, because you mentioned activities over here as well. So I'm trying to link that to zoos. So you can just perhaps mention zoos over here to avoid confusion. Congested spaces that are completely a new experience for wild animals who are used to live. So this isn't this exactly how it's given in the text? Right? Some animals are taken from the wild. These animals know what it's like to be free and live in the natural environment. So congested spaces zoos only intensify threats. Congested spaces we could rephrase that, and we can say animals taken from the wild are crammed into, as has a text used crammed. All right, so they much less space into much smaller enclosures than they naturally need. And this reduces. And we can obviously polish the sentence to be better, right? Which affects the health and reduces their lifespan. So we could put it that way. Salam alaikum, Bakar. Okay. Also, due to illiteracy, people are prone to ignore such welfare programs. Like which welfare, right? Like you're saying such welfare programs. So that means that you've already mentioned something that you are referring to. So which welfare programs are you talking about? Because I don't see the connection. Are you talking about zoos raising awareness? Is that like a welfare program? Are you talking about zoos being a welfare program itself?
Walaikum assalam.
Yes, Dua, are you there?
I guess, sir, that raising awareness itself is a welfare program. That's why I just mentioned it here.
So if you're linking it to the raising awareness part, there's so much more going on in between that when you come back to it, it seems very disconnected. If you are causing that, if you are taking that to be a welfare program,
Hmm.
so we can remove this part as well. I'm not trying to fit it in because we have to trim it down anyway. Okay, zoos are often seen as a source of entertainment for families. People prefer to visit zoos as they're comparatively less expensive. Comparatively less expensive to what? When you're saying comparatively less expensive, then what's the comparison? Right, so that's missing over here. And so you can either say that as they don't cost a lot, you're just saying that, yeah, they don't cost a lot in general, right? According to social norms, what would be considered expensive, going to a zoo is not considered expensive. Either you could just mention it that way, or if you want to refer to the trips abroad to see them in the wild, then you say they are much less expensive than safari trips abroad. And then you bring in the point that also people of all ages can enjoy there, right? Assuming that you're talking about that people of all ages can't go on the safari trips. I'd cut this out. Nevertheless, it's not always the case. As Raj has mentioned in his blog. Okay, so again the reference. So that would be a capital Z. Zoos are just for the sake of business and to make money. So when you're saying nevertheless, it's not always the case, then, right, because you're saying it after family entertainment and its cost, what this sentence sort of refers to is that it's not always the case that zoos are a source of entertainment, or it's not always the case that zoos are much less expensive, or as you originally wrote, comparatively less expensive, right? That's what it is pointing towards, and that is not what you're trying to say. So I'd remove this as well, because when you're saying nevertheless it's not the case means you are negating what you said earlier. So zoos are so you, or what you can say, however, or you view, but the sad reality is that zoos just for the sake of business and to make money. This is sort of a repetition. Business, by definition, means making money. So it's sort of redundant to say that twice. It's like saying I'm returning back. Return means to go back. Okay. So they hire untrained staff, which deteriorates conditions for them, in the animals who aren't professional in handling, who aren't professionals. A similar situation has happened recently where a lion ate its tamer. So you included something like an anecdote of your own. This happened because animals are treated so are so badly treated that they become furious. In most cases, they aren't even given proper food to eat. This triggers a menace to humans. This triggers a menace to humans. It triggers a menace. For these animals can attack anyone. Instead of saying triggers, I'll try to sort of say it stands as a menace to humans, to visitors as well. Like saying to humans who are visiting them is like a very roundabout way of saying it, very verbose way of saying it, to visitors as well. Oops. Okay. Are we almost done? Scientists are said to have the opportunity to study animal behavior, so zoos can be set up for research purposes. Remove this whole bit. In reality, not all zoos run on their income. Some are funded by the government. This negates the idea of research, as government funds are precious enough to. How does this negate the idea of research? Like, how are you linking funding to research? Could you explain that? In reality, not all the zoos are run on their incomes. Some are funded by the government. This negates the idea of research, as government funds are precious enough to invest in other fields. So you mean that the government, in the case that zoos are funded by the government, there's no research happening over there, right? But that's only for the zoos where they are funded by the government. They're private zoos as well, and so perhaps research is happening there. So I wouldn't say it negates the point entirely. So we could say now that this is a negative point, right, and this is a positive point. So if I change this, both of these won't. So once I'm done with this, what we need to do, which I and what I won't be able to do in class, is rewrite the whole thing. Rewrite the whole thing. That is very important. I'm not even going to put a linking over here. I'm just going to like not because that's like a positive negative point, so they're not sitting together. And those funds. Oh, furthermore, wild areas have now become more accessible with the introduction of jungle safaris. When research can be done in animal habitats, then what is the point of setting up zoos? Now see this point, if you mention this point first over here, then if you move it, so you need to rewrite it, right? And so if you move that point and link it to the scientist research thing, it would make much more sense than fitting in the funding over here. In between. In contrast, lands and funds restricted for zoos, dedicated, not restricted. Dedicated. For zoos can be utilized for recreation activities like parks, gyms, etc. This promotes the healthy living of human beings. You're actually talking about as a species. This promotes healthy living. And also makes people makes one productive at work. Yeah, that's nice. Thank you, Google. To sum up the idea, it is very important for everyone to speak up for animal welfare and stop relying on zoos, which are wiping off animal freedom and populations, restricting perhaps, or having detrimental effect. Are restrictive. Oh, of animal freedom and harm their population. Zoos are also a waste of money and land there where many alternatives exist to conduct the tasks associated with zoos as far as exploring wildlife is concerned. In this much advanced world, virtual zoos, put a comma over here, can be launched on the internet. I mean, it's not the same thing, obviously. Animals can be live streamed. Animals can live stream, can be live streamed from their habitats. What is Google suggesting? Can be live streamed. So putting a hyphen in there. From their habitats without being transported. Okay. Now the word count has gone up because it's taking into consideration everything I cut out and everything I put in. So if we go into editing mode and remove all of that, oh why, oh my, this is still left. This has taken much more than I anticipated, much more time. So I'll come back to this later, right? And I'll return to you later. Unfortunately, that won't be in the recording, so I'll do that. Right, because right now I really want to move on to the composition and get this done with. And there are 4 of them. Oh my. Let's start with you, Mirza. So, right, Dua, did you find my suggestions helpful? Hopefully. Yes. Okay. That's good to know. So and that's 373, which is within the limit. Okay, what have you chosen? Write a story where someone unexpectedly received a very nice gift. Okay. It was just a normal Thursday, and honestly, it was going really bad from the start. I woke up late because my alarm did not ring. I missed the school bus and had to go with my father, who was already annoyed because he was getting late for work. At school, I put a comma there, and right, you can mix up contractions. So sometimes you can use them, sometimes you can ignore them. Right over here, it was really, I woke up late because my alarm didn't. So you could use didn't over here. I'll see whether you've used any contractions later on or not. At school, things did not get so, or did not get better. I forgot to bring my physics file, and the teacher scolded me in front of everyone, which was really embarrassing. Comma over here. And later I found out I did not do well in my math quiz either. The whole day I just felt tired and disappointed in myself. Okay, that's an interesting start. When I came home, I didn't talk much. So we have a contraction there. I went straight to my room and started scrolling on my phone, thinking about how useless the day was and how nothing ever goes the way I want. And I even started comparing myself to others, which made me feel worse. A nice long sentence. I didn't know that something unexpected was waiting for me. Oh, foreshadowing. In the evening, I mean, we could put a comma here, possibly. Choose not to. My mom called me to come downstairs. You could just say, my mom called me downstairs. I thought maybe some guests had arrived, would be better. Just wanna, right? So arrived isn't any special level vocabulary, but it sounds better. And this is what I meant, Dua, by using standard vocabulary, but using it well. And of course, we want to you know be better. So instead of arrive, we could also say we could use a phrasal verb, come by. I thought maybe some guests had come by. That's better than arrived because it's a phrasal verb and not just a word. When I went into the living room, it was strangely quiet and the lights were dim. I got confused and asked what was going on, but before anyone answered, the lights suddenly turned on and everyone shouted surprise. But when they're shouting, you'd want an exclamation mark. Okay, that's not an exclamation. No. Yeah, there we go. For a moment, I just stood there because I was not expecting anything. Right? So let's change this to wasn't. We want your contractions to be scattered somewhat evenly. I wasn't expecting anything at all. It was not my birthday, comma, for dramatic effect, and no special occasion either. I saw my parents, my older sister, and even my cousin who lives nearby. On the table, there was a medium sized box wrapped in blue paper with my name written on it. They told me to open it. I'll use a full stop here. Sometimes simple sentences can be used for effect. They told me to open it. I had no clue what it could be. Right? So your sentences don't always need to be compound or complex. Simple sentences used properly can be good for effect. And if you just read that, right? So if I read it with a comma, I would be, they told me to open it. I had no clue what it could be. So I'm just giving a slight pause between the two. With a full stop, they told me to open it. I had no clue what it could be. So slightly longer pause, more drama, suspense. When I removed the wrapping, are you sure you just removed it? Didn't you like tear it off? Right? So not re- I'm not removing the removed. Tore off the wrapping and opened the box. I saw I was in fact I was stunned by what I saw. Hyphen. Well, not hyphen dash. A brand new gaming console. So there was a brand new gaming console inside. And if you want to, sort of put in your excitement, put an exclamation mark. So you can use an exclamation mark other than, direct speech. I had been talking about it for months, comma. but I knew it was expensive, so I stopped asking for it. My father smiled and said it was a gift because I had been working hard and trying my best, typo, even when things were stressful. Since you're writing it all in past tense, were stressful. That was the most unexpected and best gift I ever received. So slight tweaks. Now this is something that's simple. It's very simple, but it works, right? Will it get like a very high score? It should get to 20 at least, I believe, right? If not higher. And especially if you put in some of the changes I've suggested, right? It should be up there at least 20, if not more. I don't normally discuss marks, but the reason I'm saying that is because it's very simple, as you can see, right? But simplicity isn't a bad thing, right? As long as you have a working story and you know you're fulfilling the requirement. So Parker, I will return that to you. And next, let's check Afrin's submission. We've done question 3. Descriptive. You seem to like that. Describe the scene at a local park or public garden both early in the morning and in the afternoon. 460. Okay. The park finally starts to lose, so you're writing it in present tense. Okay. The park finally starts to lose its gray and black monotony as delicate golden rays of sunlight slowly break through the sky, one after the other. Break through the sky. How about break across break across the sky from the horizon, or break across from the horizon, or race across the sky. So I put in slashes, so just suggestions, alternatives, one after another. Okay, a rooster crows somewhere in the distance as if it were nature's. We don't need the over here. Nature's alarm clock. The sparrows chirp and the quails sing, composing a fine chorus. 15 minutes. You should be able to manage. The grass sparkles with shiny crystal-like droplets of dew. The grass sparkles with shiny crystal-like droplets of dew. How about the dew makes the grass sparkle like crystal? Because this, it seems like your description is you're being very explanatory in your description, right? So if you're being metaphorical, then I mean I've also mentioned you, but I don't know, my personal take. So I'll put this in brackets rather than cutting it out. Crystal like, so with a dash in between, hyphen in this case. So you don't want to like over explain and be very obvious, especially if you're using metaphors. An earthy scent lingers in the air. The atmosphere is calm, almost therapeutic, with the soft rustling of leaves and the constant chilly breeze. A tiny squirrel with a striped tail slowly creeps down a tree. It stays still for a few seconds, waiting for the perfect instance. Instance. Before skidding across to the next tree. I take a deep breath as the breeze ruffles my hair. Being in this moment, I am reminded of the simplicity of life. My brain surges with a wave of positive emotions as if I was being cleansed, as if I am being cleansed of all negativity, since you're writing in past, present tense. A cat yowls nearby, another one hisses, then a series of growling and aggressive meowing until one of them zooms up a tree. The sky is much brighter now, the sunlight is stronger, yet still gentle. An older man in his 60s sits cross legged on one of the wooden benches, squinting at the morning paper. Few middle aged locals jog along the circular length of the park, determined to complete the round for the day. So I was just waiting whether you refer to what you're describing as a park or not, and you come to that later, which works, right? The day goes on, the park empties, but only for a few hours. So you've mentioned the sun and the animals and your own, right? Now that works because they have not specifically they mentioned the scene at the local park. Right? They haven't focused on if they in brackets they had given that describe the people and all that, so your description would need to be a bit more focused on the people there. But since it's just scene, and so yeah, so there are not a lot of people there in the morning perhaps. The park empties, but only for a few hours. The sun is high up in the sky now. Its glare strong compared to the tranquility of the morning. The park is now a landmark of noise and crowd. Eager little children run around in games of tag or hide and seek. And seek. A family sets the picnic table together, radiating love and warmth. A group of moms, group, I'd use mothers over here, share the neighborhood gossip while they watch their while watching their children from the while watching. The park roars with laughter and excited shouts. A boy sits alone under a tree, looking longingly at the children playing together. An older boy walks up to him, inviting him to play, inviting him to join in. The little boy's face lights up as he quickly gets up to run along with his new friend. For a moment, I wander down memory lane as I remember my own childhood in this very park. I take a mental note to bring my little brother here sometime. Cars whiz past outside the park every now and then. A guard can be heard yelling at a group of teenagers who apparently tried to graffiti the park boundary wall. The sunlight gets dimmer and the park starts losing its color once again. Families wind up their picnics and parents collect their children. Slowly, the park empties for the last time for the day. Now, right, we could slowly the park empties for the day can also work, but I'm guessing you compared it to emptying it earlier, and that's why you're saying for the last time for the day. So I guess that works as well. So those were my suggestions, minor tweaks, right? Well written overall. I'll return that to you. Now they are less than 10 minutes. How many exactly? 8 minutes according to Google Meet. Can I take a look at your submission? Amar is also not here. So I'll take a look at his later. 474. You like to write, huh? Write a story which includes the sentence, we opened the door and excitedly stepped inside. So, I mean, I can very well understand if you enjoy writing and you go over the limit, because back in the day, the word limit for when I gave the paper was up to 600 words, and I would write up to like 750, 800. I can only imagine my teacher's sentiments and what the examiner thought, right? But it worked. I got an A, right? Back then, A's used to be at over 90%. So I got my A, but yeah, going over the word limit was, I mean, if I didn't go with the word limit, for me, it was short. So let's take a look at this quickly. Again, what was the topic? Write a story which includes a sentence, we opened the door and excitedly stepped inside. Okay. I was sitting at City Hospital waiting anxiously for the doctor. I rubbed my hands. This is going to be about a baby. I'm guessing. I'm guessing. I rubbed my hands on my sweaty forehead and released a sigh. Right? We can just put in heavy over here. As I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the wall, I was struck by a sudden flashback of this morning. Mom, I shouted desperately, come out, see what I bought. I was so excited that I couldn't even stand straight. My dream had finally come true. I bought a car from my own income. As Mom appeared in front of the door, at the front door, or at the, I'm putting front in brackets. Obviously, you're not going to do that when you're writing it. So, right, it's probably the front door. So in fact, I won't put in brackets. I beeped the horn. Beep beep. Okay. When she saw the car, she couldn't believe it. Her eyes welled up with tears, and she ran to hug me. The moment was so emotional that I also started crying. Let's have a drive, my brother chuckled. I nodded elatedly. We opened the door and excitedly stepped in. Okay, so there's your line, which is interesting, right? I thought something else, but you're excitedly stepping into the car. This was the first drive I was having in that car, so I was not very familiar with its functions. Okay, the gears were also quite tight, yet I was able to drive. The drive was going flawlessly. The cold breeze, you'd want to use lowercase t over there. Brushing my face, the bushes running endlessly along the footpath, and the traffic moving smoothly. Everything was fine until someone appeared from nowhere in front of my car. Oh, my brother screamed. I panicked. My hands started trembling. Applying the brakes, the tires screeched against the road. The car had stopped. People had started gathering around my car, and they were all looking suspiciously at me. I hastily came out of the car, like stepped out, stepped out of the car and moved forward. It was a kid, though he had though he had fallen unconscious, not become unconscious. Luckily, he wasn't bleeding. What have you done, sister? My brother whispered. Remove the question mark from there and the comma from here and put a question mark over here. My brother whispered. So the question mark does not necessarily mean a complete sentence, and so the my would not be capitalized because the direct speech is just quoting what the brother said and it is part of your whole sentence, and so right, the m for my will be lowercase still. He had turned as white as a sheet. He was scared. So turning as white as a sheet means he's scared, so this is redundant. The crowd was getting larger and they were all trying to wake the boy up, not wake up the boy. Are we still in class? 3 minutes. Okay. Wake the boy up, but he wasn't responding. I am taking him to the hospital, I uttered courageously. My brother assisted the boy, carried him, because he's unconscious, so you can't really assist him. Along with the other men. Okay, and we left the place. Who is with the kid? The nurse asked. Her sharp voice echoed in the waiting room. I was back in reality. Upon her call, I raised my hand. The doctor is calling you, she said. I gulped saliva down my throat. Okay. uh, I was continuously praying for the boy's life. So over there, we perhaps use a semicolon. No, not that. That. I had been. I trudged to the room where the doctor was sitting. There was no tension on his face, which gave me hope, and I proceeded to the cabin. The doctor said the kid was totally fine, but due to sudden shock, he was unconscious. Then he handed me a prescription to buy medicine from the pharmacy. Leaving his room, I was so relieved. I smiled at how unpredictable the day was, which began with happiness and ended with a life being saved. Uh, I mean, we could sort of do without the last line, but overall okay. So yeah, right. My guess was off the mark. Okay, the class is about to end any second now. So right, I'm returning that to you. Good job. Good attempt. You can take a look at the suggestions and again, right, rewrite it with the corrections and then take a look at how that seems. And so I'll see you guys tomorrow when we start a new round of past papers. All right. All right. Allah.